Hello, folks, and welcome to today's expert webinar presented by AccountantsWorld. We will be getting started in about 2 minutes here with Kimberly Ellison-Taylor. If you are looking for the handouts are at the bottom of your GoToWebinar engine, and you can access those. Once again, we will be getting started here in about 2 minutes with Kimberly Ellison-Taylor, so hang tight. Hello, and welcome to today's expert webinar presentation presented by AccountantsWorld. Today we are featuring Kimberly Ellison-Taylor, and her presentation is entitled Leading People in the Age of Machines. I want to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Tom Provine. I am a marketing coordinator here at AccountantsWorld. Div Bonsali will be in the background of the presentation, but I will be taking care of the MC duties, if you will, today. Just wanted to go over the GoToWebinar engine. You can access the attendee control panel using the orange arrow to hide or expand the panel. You can toggle through the audio options to choose your telephone or computer speakers or click on the phone icon. And if you have any questions, whether they be technical regarding GoToWebinar or about the presentation materials, you can expand the questions section below and click send. We are always looking for engagement from our attendees, so feel free to send in as many questions as you like. Ooh, let me go back here, just 2 slides, I apologize. We will be offering 1 free CPE for today's webinar. And what are the things that you need to do in order to get CPE? Well, you need to attend this live webinar for no less than 50 minutes. You need to respond to all of the polling questions during today's webinar and submit the post-webinar survey within 24 hours after the webinar has ended. That will be sent. Once the webinar closes, it will go live for you, or it will be sent in an email following the webinar. And you will receive your CPE within 1 to 3 business days. And we just highly encourage you to add webinar@accountantsworld.com to your trusted email list. That is where the CPE certificate will be coming from. So make sure that you add that to your trusted email list, and we will be going from there. So a little bit about today's presenter. Today's presenter is Kimberly Ellison-Taylor. She is the immediate past chair of the AI CPA and the Maryland Association of CPAs. She is currently the Global Accounting Strategy Director for Oracle America, and she is a thought leader on how to lead accounting organizations in this age of disruption, via technology. And she's one of the most engaging women in this industry. So we are thrilled to have her today. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Kimberly Ellison-Taylor. Hey, Kimberly, how are you?
Hi, Tom. How are you? Thank you so much for inviting me to present. I am absolutely looking forward to this conversation. I have the opportunity to travel, I would say, pretty much around the world, speaking with leaders across the profession about technology in particular and the intersection of accounting, finance, and technology. And so it's interesting to me that there are some very common traits that I see no matter where I go. And so, in my own background, just to give a little more detail, I started my career working at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, had the amazing opportunity of working on a number of projects where we had team members that were representing many different disciplines and many different categories of skill set. I would also say that after that, I worked at Motorola. So I had the opportunity to work in a telecom environment, leading teams and project implementations, followed by an opportunity to work at KPMG, where I worked on internal audit, external audit teams, as well as doing some advisory work around consulting, strategic plans, security assessments, et cetera. Then I was a CIO in a local government environment. And so, as Chief Information Officer, really led a lot of whether commercial off the shelf software projects or if they were application development projects, opportunities to work with stakeholders across the organization, and also leading people on projects that have significant mission critical impact on the organization, and also to the citizens and residents and visitors of Prince George's County, Maryland. When I left there, I've been at Oracle now for the last 15 years. And in my most recent capacity, I have a role as a thought leader, really talking about transformation, innovation, moving the organization forward, leveraging emerging technologies that we're going to talk about in this presentation. So why did I say all that? Because I think where I am today is that I speak people, and I speak people across the world, across a lot of diversity characteristics. I'm also delighted to be the vice chairman of AICPA's National Commission of Diversity and Inclusion. And so for me, speaking people means meeting people where they are, regardless of the industry, regardless of the role. There are some things that I think we may be forgetting about when we are designing our project plans. And so we are not maximizing the full capability of what we can bring as a result of this new innovation that we're going to bring about. I think most of us would agree that people are the most important assets in any organization. And when you have the right team mix, you know that you have, I would say, a resource that is worth its weight in gold. And so I think this topic is very personal to me because people talk with me about how they feel about the projects. And here I am promoting and talking about technology, but I have absolute empathy and sympathy for team members who feel that they're being disrupted as well. So I just want to talk a lot more about what that means. Everywhere you look today, we're talking about the pace of change. The whether it's fast change, the speed of change, and just plain old change, 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 and change. And what's so interesting is that for some people, they're okay with change as long as it's you changing, not them. They don't want their cheese moved. They like doing their business operations. They've been doing it so well, they know it on cruise control almost. And yet, here we are talking, especially in the accounting finance profession, we're talking a lot about anticipating change, looking around not just the first corner, but two corners around that corner to figure out where we need to be so that we continue to promote and protect the public interest, so that we ensure that organizations are viable and that they are thriving and supporting the communities in which they operate in. And so, but when we say that, all of that sounds great. But when we say that, the piece that people don't hear is what's in it for me. Why should I care? And so I'm hoping as a result of this presentation that you will chat in and say, yes, Kimberly, that's spot on. Or you'll say, Kimberly, that hasn't been my experience at all. So I'd love to get some interactions and validations on whether or not you're seeing the same thing. And I can tell you that there are a number of macro trends that everyone's talking about that are really pushing and fueling, I would say, this rate of change. And so the first area would be demographics. And so when you think about demographics, we have traditionalists still working, those who were pretty much the silent generation. We have boomers who are still actively working and leading in the profession. We have Gen X, like me, Gen Y, and now we have Generation Z. And so those expectations of what people want, how they want to be engaged, what they expect to receive, and quite frankly, how much change and they're willing to accept and what they hope to get out of the change, I think we have to take into account. The other area I would say is also consumer empowerment. And I have said this in a number of places, but I'm going to own it 100%. We are in a heightened arena of consumer empowerment. That means that for your clients, customers, business partners, anyone who's in your stakeholder environment, they can fact check whatever you say in real time. They can validate it, they can reinforce it, because they can go out and see what is going on and see if what you're saying aligns with what's going on in the internet. And I can tell you from a consumer empowerment perspective, we all do it. And probably one of the professions we do it with most, where we're kind of fact checking and validating them, would be the medical profession. And so I joke that if I was not feeling well, I would go online, look up all my symptoms. I would say, oh, I'm not coughing. My head isn't, I don't have a fever. I don't feel nauseous. I didn't eat anything that would have, messed with my stomach. Okay, so now I'm ready to call my doctor because I've done all this upfront work. And by the time I, email them through the portal, because of course we don't want to stay on hold long. Everyone wants convenience. I'm definitely no exception. And I say, doctor, I have diagnosed all my symptoms. Before you even say anything, I've already done this, I've checked this, I've done that, and I've also taken this medicine from the local pharmacy, but it's not working. I think I really need an antibiotic. And so here I am, have done all of this upfront work that I think is the reason for why I'm not feeling well. But isn't that kind of what all of our clients, customers, team members, and partners are doing as well? And so whenever we message change, we have to be consistent and we have to be transparent because it's so easy for people to go out and figure out if we're really telling them the absolute truth. From a technology perspective, we are talking about blockchain, cybersecurity, big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about each one of those. And so it's scary. It is scary for people who didn't grow up native to technology and they're thinking, what is going to happen to me and my job? And we see this play out over and over again. Because if you're in the vendor business, such as, I am with Oracle, then, we're in the business of helping our customers, clients, business partners make better decisions. We're in the business of enabling predictive analytic capability so that they can figure out what new markets to go in. We're in the business of having mission critical impact on organizations. But at the same time, we also know, all of us, if we're being really honest, that technology does free us up and free up team members from doing things that they would have ordinarily have done. And that's what people hear, except that they don't hear it as the way I said it in a very PC way. They hear, oh my gosh, we're going to replace 15 people in this department and we're going to close down 3 plants in 3 different locations. That's what they hear. And so I think we have to be really careful when we're talking about enabling frictionless environments and better ways to interact with our customers because we can't interact with our customers if we don't have the team members we need on deck, fully supportive, fully operating in this new digital environment that we all find ourselves in. So that brings me to the first polling question to ask all of you. So, is your organization one, actively working on transformation, two, adopting a wait and see approach, or three, thinking about starting transformation initiatives in the next 3 to 6 months? And I'm hoping Tom or Sharon will ensure that the poll is open.
Yep, the poll is open, Kimberly. So, like Kimberly said, is your organization actively working on transformation, adopting a wait and see approach, or thinking about transformation in the next 3 to 6 months? And once again, we just want to remind everybody that these questions are required for CPE credit. All right, so we are waiting for everyone to select their answers. I'm going to give it about another 10 seconds here while everybody answers the first poll. Alrighty, we have about 94%. Give it another couple seconds here. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, we are closing the poll question and let's share those results, Kimberly. So it looks to be about 44% of people say they are adopting a wait and see approach, but we do have 37% of people saying that they're actively working on some transformation initiatives. Does that line up with what you see in your findings so far?
It absolutely does. And I guess I'm surprised, Tom, that no one picked the starting transformation initiatives because I can't see the poll results. Did anyone pick that last one?
Yes, they had 19% of people said that they were looking at that as well.
Okay, so we have more people that are adopting a wait and see approach. And I think it's because we have an overused word, I think, and it's transformation. We're probably, and it's interesting, I was in a focus group discussion and we had different terms that people are using, and they're using words like continuous innovation. They're talking about evolving their business processes. But in that particular focus group that I participated in, they were trying to get away from the word transformation because it feels scary and it feels daunting. But I will say that adopting a wait and see approach is not what we are advising. I would say if anyone's in the transformation, innovation, evolving your business process space, or optimizing your solution base, that's not a good approach, because what will happen is this. We went from hearing about Uber, for instance, from one day you didn't hear anything at all, and then the next day it was off to the races. Unfortunately, we don't see with some of these major disruptions, we don't see the tick, 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 tick. So you have time to prepare because you see it coming. If you're not already working on an innovative process or modernizing your financial back office, when it's time to make that leap to grow and scale to meet the next regulatory guideline, it's going to be difficult to catch up. But I also understand that there are people who would say, Kimberly, I don't want to be on the bleeding edge. And I get that. So I understand that 100%. But there's something to be said about being positioned and ready to embrace the change, such that if your customers tomorrow said they wanted something different, you are competitive in the marketplace and you're ready to go. So that's very interesting insight. So the next thing I would say, as we go to the next slide, is when you think about disruptions, we've been talking a lot about the organizational disruptions, but what about the people impact? And so, because we're informed consumers, and that's one of the macro trends, we saw what happened. I mean, we more recently saw Toys R Us, we saw Sears, we saw Payless, we saw Forever 21. We're seeing some of the areas that we thought would always be here not here anymore. And so that makes us a little anxious at work. I can tell you that growing up in the inner city of Baltimore, we had a guy that sold encyclopedias, and he would go up and down the street knocking on doors to sell encyclopedias. And my mom actually bought a full set because she wanted us to be able to do our homework and have the resources that we need. And she was on a payment plan because they were so expensive. Now, fast forward to today. I don't know, and I have two sons. One is 15 and one is 17. I don't know if my sons have ever seen in live physical person an encyclopedia. And so, and if even if they did, it's at no cost because you can get any of that information online. So, what happened to the encyclopedia guy? What happened to the person who would help you with your luggage because your luggage didn't have wheels on it? And now the hotels would hire less people because people, for the most part, a lot of them are wheeling their own bags in. What happens when we have disruptions that happen because of just convenience? For instance, when you look at the telephone, you look at the library systems, changes in every community, and it's happening at a faster and faster clip. And so what we need to do is imagine what happens when that happens in our organization. When people hear, oh, we're going to have change, we're going to be more efficient, we're going to be more effective, I think they just hear we're going to be out of a job, the company is going to make more money, and then where am I going to work? And if they're also paying attention to the news, what we also hear, at least in the United States, is that we are at a record unemployment rate, which means that for many of them, depending on their skill set, they're really concerned about where they would go. Where do they end up? And so I say all of that to say When we talk about change and what's happening in the environments around us, we also have to take into account that if you're building new change initiatives, if you don't have the right team members, what's going to happen to the change? People are as afraid of change, I would say, as they may be of spiders, of heights, of public speaking. And I think that when they hear blockchain, they are even more scared to adapt and adopt to these new technologies. And so earlier, way earlier in my career, and maybe for many of you, and I'd love to hear if that was the case, I remember when email was really just taking off, and we had senior leaders who would have their assistants print out the email and put it on their desk, and pretty much because they just weren't going to engage with new technologies, newfangled technologies, I might add, when they could just have it printed out on their desk. And so that would be so far beyond what many of us would be experiencing today. So, yes, we can message that artificial intelligence is going to help us make better decisions, that machine learning can assist us with ensuring that we reduce error and bring on our team members more productively because we have a business process flow that the machine would, based on how we've interacted in the past, the machine would say, wow, you're doing a different transaction than what you've done or what has been done the last 100 times that we've been doing this. Is this correct? Are you sure you want to do this? Yes, we can absolutely talk about blockchain that will remove intermediaries and improve transparency from both ends and all ends of transactions. We can also talk about the Internet of Things that provides more data in real time that can assist us with big data qualitative analysis and using just things that we're doing every day, especially if some of us are using wearables. It also can help with, working on predictive analytic projects and different reports that we all have responsibilities for. Robotics process automation is when we're messaging that, we talk about really reducing manual transactions and automating them and having bots provide that kind of assistance. Now, I don't know about you, but growing up, I looked at the Jetsons. We knew about Rosie. We knew about the driverless cars. We're in the age of the Jetsons because all of those things that I grew up thinking that that would never happen potentially in my lifetime seem so far fetched are very real realities. And so we have to get people excited and on board with these new changes. But it also means if the employees or team members are worried because they're empowered, they see what's going on in other places. When they hear us talk about all of the things that I just said, I think if there was a cartoon bubble above their heads, what they would hear in the meeting. So we're sitting there, we're having this meeting, we're talking about these emerging technologies, we're saying blockchain is the next thing to slice bread. And you know what they're thinking? They're thinking, I need to get my resume together. I need to figure out if I can go back to my old job. I need to figure out what am I going to do next? And I need to start looking right now. And so our projects would suffer because the people that we're relying on to do the work, one, are actively interviewing and looking for their next opportunity, or two, they're afraid to bring their best ideas forward because the best ideas forward that would reduce latency, that would speed up, project process flow, remove friction, potentially could be their jobs being replaced. And so that's what we have to think about when we're messaging all of the world of technology, because I'll tell you, I have been in meetings and conferences where people have said, oh, instead of having 10 people do your FP&A, you'll be able to do it with a machine. The AI will do what took 10 people to do in a month. The AI will be able to do in a matter of hours, and you'll only need two people. Well, I don't know about you, but as I sit and I listen and I talk to the people in the audience later, they're cringing because they hear, I won't have a job. What does this mean for me? So, what that also means for us is that we have to go back to the basics. So, yes, we are well aware that projects have an executive sponsor, they have requirements, there's a scope document, there are critical success factors, there's the schedule, the work breakdown structure. We'll talk about the quality plan, but in all of those things, we may even talk about the new technologies that we want to have on deck, and there'll be a people component. But right up front, I think we have to understand that people are the most critical component. And so when we are talking about the project, before we even message the change, before we message why this is going to be great, we're going to have competitive year over year growth, we're going to be 20% more profitable, we're going to have less costs, we're going to be able to meet all of the regulatory guidelines, we're going to build new multinational relationships, we're going to have our supply chain be more efficient, more effective than ever. We're going to have to talk about the hard topic. The hard topic basically is all around the people. So, what does that mean? That means that we have to let them buy in to what's in it for them. But before they even do that, we've got to talk about this messaging that we do. We talk about the case for change all the time, as you can imagine, why people would want to embrace new technologies. It's going to help them be more efficient. There's going to be growth that's going to help them go global. They're going to expand operations in a number of different places. They're going to have more digital engagement than ever. Their business model is going to evolve so people can do, engage on tablets, mobile, social. They can engage any way they want, and everyone's going to know their story consistently no matter where they are. And then, of course, we're going to be able to do this at a more cost effective amount of funding than we've done before. But I'll tell you what a colleague said to me. And she actually said, this is Amy Radin, she actually said, Kimberly, you realize, of course, that people will take painkillers faster than they will take vitamins. And when she said that, I was like, wow, I had an aha moment. And the aha moment was that maybe we're messaging this thing the wrong way. Because my inclination is to tell you all of the amazing reasons why you want to do this, the benefits. But maybe when you're appealing to a group, and when you're appealing to the group, we're speaking to individuals. We're speaking to each department, whether it's treasury management, whether it's the financial reporting area, FP&A, whether we're talking about RevRec, whatever departments you have, there's something in your messaging they have to see for themselves. And so maybe what we have to say is that, guys, if we embrace this new change, guess what? We will have the pain of having hundreds and sometimes thousands of manual journal entries. We won't have to do those anymore. We won't have to do the project, the reports that we spend hours and weeks on. And especially if, and I'm told from my colleagues all over the world, that there's always the Bob. And I remember having a more recent conversation when they said, well, Kimberly, we get it out of our system and then we massage it and enrich the data in the Bob. And I said, what is the Bob? And they said, Kimberly, is the most amazing spreadsheet with pivot tables from one of our team members named Bob. And Bob hasn't been here in 10 years, but it's his spreadsheet that everybody knows and uses because for whatever reason, the system that we set up or we configured, it's either too old to do what we wanted it to do, or in the project implementation phases, that aspect was one of the things that we were going to get to later. Hence, we have the Bob. And so, if organizations are running their business off of spreadsheets, we need to think about how do we talk about the pain of what would happen if the Bob wasn't operational anymore. Why not put that functionality in a cloud-based solution that would help them be more effective and productive and would free them up to go into the field? Maybe they'd want to work more closely with business partners. Maybe they'd want to travel. Maybe they'd want more training for a different job. And so we have to talk about what the benefits are, but first we have to talk about the pain. And certainly that does mean reducing the time they are away from families, their family because they have to spend so much time doing reconciliations of the various financial systems. Because I'm all too aware that many organizations have multiple systems that they use, and it just makes it very difficult for team members to do their jobs effectively. And so, in addition to how we're going to grow the organization, maybe if we could also talk about what's in it for the team members. We'll be able to have more promotions. We'll be able to give, better cost of living raises and maybe better pay for performance bonuses. Now, I know that what I'm saying is a very people focused approach. And sometimes, if you're on the business side, it's not always practical or realistic that you can do that. But I do believe if people are our most important asset in the organization, the most important resource that we have, the IP of what makes us have the best customer service organization, that to some degree, we have to have shared value around the success of a project, shared value around adopting new innovations and new transformations. And so I just think that we have to talk about the band-aids that we're currently applying. If we're not, as efficient, and it takes us a long time to get an answer to the CEO's question or whatever leader you report to. But we also have to talk about the frustration of keeping outdated systems functioning. And I can tell you from the meetings that I'm in that part of the reason the business case is so difficult is because the work gets done. And we know that, behind the curtain, it's hours and hours and hours of time making sure that the reports get filed when they're supposed to, making sure that the business is closed or according to whatever schedule that you have in place. It's getting done. And so what we have to do is figure out how we can still get the work done because we don't want to lose our jobs. But at the same time, we have to message what that pain is so that our leaders have a realistic expectation of what that project is going to have to be able to do in order to win our buy-in and support. I find that many people are cynical that I talk with about whether this new innovation is going to happen. For them, it feels like TQM and total quality management was the initiative that was on deck when I was working at NASA. A lot of people are cynical about the change that happens in the environment. And so maybe about 2 months ago, did an article with Accounting Today, and it was called Humans or Robots. And I said the answer is both. The answer really is both. But in order to convince your team members, now we're going to talk about what do we do? How do we get people on board? Well, the first thing, and we know this, they have to buy into the leader. Whoever the messenger is, they have to trust you. And you have to be candid. I can't tell you how many people would say, Kimberly, we're doing these culture surveys, and yet we don't feel like anyone's really listening. We're doing these culture surveys, and and I'm just going to be really direct here. The sentiment of some of the individuals I speak with, they would say the answer is already known to the leaders. They're just asking us so they can say that they did. And so that tells me that there is a lack of trust in the environment for whatever that change is. And so what I have found is that when we're talking about the change, we'll talk about the budget, the project, the timeline, the why it's going to help the share price, why the investors should care, who's on board with it. What we're not really talking about are the people. We skim that part, one, because, and quite frankly, in some instances, we don't fully know. And you don't want to yell fire in a crowded theater. I get that. But what I have found is that people respond a lot more positively if you're able to say something. Uncertainty is what fuels the grapevine. The grapevine is alive and well. And I don't know what, I know organizations try to, squish the grapevine. I think it's just going to be here. It's a part of the organization. So let's take some of that fuel out of the rumor mill. Let's just be upfront to say, guys, we are working on a new innovative approach that's going to make us much more competitive. It's going to put us in a position where we can scale when change happens. We're going to have a modern back office that is going to be in the cloud. And yes, that could have some impact for IT. Yes, that could have some impact for our finance team. But we're committed to being on board with the people who have worked with us. And so, what we're going to do is work with our chief people officer on what training and skills might be needed in the new environment, because we don't want to leave anybody behind. And if you're committed to us and you're committed to working on this project, you're committed to being here and working as hard as you can and being a part of the mission, purpose, and values of this organization, then we are going to support and back our people. And we're going to either help you be here, but if you decide this isn't where you want to be, we're going to help you find the next place too. But we need you to be along on this journey with us. We need you to keep an open mind. We need you to be positive about the change. We're not going to know everything. We know that change is difficult, and we're relying on you to let us know when we are not getting it right or when we've forgotten something. You're on the front line. We need you. And so that's what I think the messaging has to be before you even talk about all of the wonderful benefits that's going to happen as a result. Because if you don't say that, all they're going to hear is, again, oh, I wonder if that recruiter is still, operational because I need to send my resume over. And so it's not just one time. There are, according to those different generations, people who need to hear it several times. Maybe there absolutely needs to be a town hall. There needs to be a webcast. There needs to be a podcast. There needs to be a newsletter. And yes, I know you're like, Kimberly, wait a minute. We got to put the money in the technology. We can't put the money on this part. But I'll tell you what, if the money isn't put in on the change management of getting people on board, you will have your new system will still be there with the Bob operating and coexisting with it. And two, you will have people who will resist it the entire way. And instead of being a champion, which I'll talk about, they're going to be the naysayer that actually helps the project not succeed because they want to know where they are in the process. Now, yes, I know there's a place for the carrot and there's a place for the stick. I would prefer, in most instances, to lead with the carrot, but not afraid to say, hey guys, we got to get on board or we got to find a new organization for you because we need everyone to be aligned with this new direction. But I think it's worth upfront setting the stage on the why, the who, the when, the where, but after you tell them what the impact is to them. Now, I know we're also saying in the marketplace, we're going to free you up to work on other things. I think we're going to have to spend some time doing a journey map exercise on what those other things might be. Let's do some design thinking. Let's get creative. That if you didn't have to spend, I would ask the team, if you didn't have to spend these hours doing these manual journal entries, what would you do? How could you add value to our internal customer? What could you do to help us with whatever our mission, purpose, and values are? And maybe crowdsource the ideas, because the best ideas I have found are sitting in the heads of the people that are actually doing the work. And yes, I know there is a place for bringing in consultants and who know the business, who've worked for years, they've done implementations, they've got lessons learned and best practices. But in order to not alienate the team, there definitely needs to be a lot of interaction with the people who are doing the work in order to get them on board. And so it has to be transparent. If you think people might be displaced because your organization is going to be smaller, I think you tell them that. And I think you say, but we're going to train you. Stay with us for the journey. It is a defining moment. And I can tell you, having been a CIO, when you sign up to be in IT, you know that the day you give your notice, your system is turned off. You don't get 2 weeks if you're in technology. We've turned off your system because it just comes with the territory of protecting the investment and resources. And it's not that we don't trust you, but we're just being cautious. And I certainly know that because as a CIO, the day I gave my notice, my system access was disconnected. And so, yes, I get that when you're trying to get through your busy season, if you give that level of transparency, you're concerned about what that might mean for getting the work done. But it's about trust. And it's about getting people to say they care about me, they care about my family, they care what happens. And if I stay, they're going to take care of me. And that to me is what a lot of our colleagues all over the world are looking for. And so you have to be as specific as you can. But if you say you don't know, and you that's okay too. I just think your authenticity and the value of what you're saying is going to come across loud and clear. And then people will be more inclined to buy into what you say. So let's go to the next polling question. And Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Kimberly. All right, so let's launch this second poll question. All right, team members are excited about new possibilities, cannot wait to retire, or nervous about what it means for their jobs. So, what do you think about your team members? And folks, just a reminder, you're more than welcome to reach out with any questions that you have about the material. Kimberly's given us a ton of wonderful talking points right now, so I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions or comments about anything that she's chatting with us about today. So, all right, we are at 88% voted so far in the poll. We're going to give it another 5 to 10 minutes here, or excuse me, 10 seconds, pardon me. So, and Kimberly, it was very interesting when you were mentioning the encyclopedias. I can't even remember the last time that I used an encyclopedia. It had to have been in grade school for myself. So I thought that was, an interesting nugget that you had in there.
Yes, I'm
So
dating myself, and I bet you there are quite a few people on here who remember the encyclopedias as well,
that's for sure.
for
All right, we have
sure.
about 94% voted, going once, going twice. All right, we're going to close the polls here and we're going to share the results. So, Kimberly, 34% said that they were excited about new possibilities. Um, cannot wait to retire. 15% of our attendees said that, but by far, people said it was nervous about what it means for their jobs. So I guess my question to you is, do you feel like there is still a necessity for the human element in all industries, especially the accounting industry, which is what this webinar mostly serves?
Absolutely, because we've seen the surveys, we've seen the results that said entry level work was going to not be as needed as much in the future. We're going to have smart contracts. So if you're working in a procurement type function or looking at contracts, we're going to have bots and robots helping with those. We see the impact on our profession. If you're in tax, you already knew that people were doing tax at home with automated tax software. I mean, we definitely see that impact. And so when we're talking about messaging the change, there needs to be the first part of that change discussion needs to be about the people because that 52% is very consistent about what we hear. Because when you're sitting in one of those roles, let's say if you're in IT, for instance, and I know we're talking about finance, but let's just say IT because it's easier to use an example that's not us. But if you're in IT and the messaging is, well, if you move to the cloud, you finance, you won't have to rely on IT anymore because we know how long it takes IT to do your application development. If you want to widen the columns on your screen, we know that could take 6 months. But if you're in a cloud, it'll go a lot faster. Well, that might be true, but I don't know if I think that that is the best way to get technology's engagement. And the same thing I would say about finance. If we are an accounting, we're trying to get our team members on board. If we say that, we immediately have to come back with, guess what, guys? When you don't have to do that anymore, we've got this already ready to go for you. We're going to put you in the field. We're going to have you work on mergers and acquisitions. We're going to have you do exploration of what areas we can expand our business to. We're going to have you take a look at the complexity of operating in different territories around the world. We're going to give you new opportunities to expand your skill set. And by the way, we're going to give you the training that you need in order to get there. Now, when you say that, the fear factor will still be there because, hey, we're in this environment of consumer empowerment and everything is online, and every day we turn on the news, there's something else going on. And so it's uncomfortable. We have bills to pay, kids in college. I mean, it's the empathy that we want our leaders to convey that, yes, I work for you, I'm way down the totem pole, but please know that every decision that you make impacts my livelihood. The decisions that you make impact my life. So when you're talking about it, show me that you know that this change is going to be a big deal for me, because I've been doing this job for 35 or 40 years and I'm not ready to retire, or I can't retire. So now I'm 55, I'm 60. Don't put me out to pasture. Don't say, oh, Kimberly's 60, so she won't be able to work anymore. I think I might want to work 5 more years. Can you take me on the journey? Or if I'm on the front end of my career and there's still a lot of historical context things that I don't know, I'm concerned. I went to school for this area that now you're saying you're not going to do. And I came here specifically for that area, turned down other opportunities to come and work with you. Tell me that I made the best decision because you invest in your people. And that's what I think people want to hear. So the next thing I would say is
Well, Kimberly,
this
real
is a
quick, I just
slide.
want to, pardon me, I just wanted
Sure,
to interject with a quick question. Phyllis was
sure.
mentioned that you stated both humans and robots. Should one go back to school, and how could one stay up to date with changes, especially technology, which is ever growing and ever changing?
So it's interesting because as accountants, we automatically think school and formal education. But I'm going to tell you, there are a lot of certificate programs. I know AICPA has quite a few. I would encourage you to go out to aicpa.org or cgma.org. There is a certificate program that has a competency of learning that goes through the people, business leadership, technical skills that will stay kind of current. I wouldn't say kind of, but it will stay current, relatively so. And so, what you could do is get a certificate with a digital badge that would show and highlight your competency in the area. So, if you said, I want to be more proficient in cybersecurity or blockchain, you can do it. The other thing that's a benefit is in today's environment, back to the consumer empowerment, there's everything on YouTube. We could YouTube and get a basic level understanding of how we want to operate in the new environment, what new technologies you want to know more about. So, yes, you could absolutely go to school. Yes, we're always going to be in a mode of learning. There is no there. I think that this technology we're talking about today, next year, next week, tomorrow, for all I know, there'll be a new technology coming out. And I think we just have to stay evergreen, which means we're always open to learning something new. And I think that's what our leaders are looking for. They want us to be open minded. They don't want us to say, oh, that'll never work because we're worried about our jobs. They want us, if they earn and deserve this trust, I would say too, to trust them that even as it changes, even as organizations have to be agile, even as we were doing something last year, but this year we're going to do something different. Maybe we made a mistake. Maybe the implementation didn't go well. We still need everybody to be on board with the vision of moving forward. And so I would say, Phyllis, that's a great question. I would encourage you to take a look at those websites and really focus on the areas that you think might benefit and work best for you and your organization. And I'm more than happy if you want to link in, we can talk a lot more about it offline because there may be some things specific to what industry. You might be in accounting, but accounting and manufacturing, accounting and finance, accounting and healthcare, accounting and professional services. You might be in nonprofits or government, and that might tweak what I would say a little different. So please do link in with me. and happy to engage and talk more. Is that the only question, Tom?
That was the one right now. So you can continue with the presentation. Just so you know, we have about 10
Abs-
minutes left.
yes, and we're getting there. So, from a digital finance operating model perspective, this is pretty much a summary slide out of the handout that has been attached. These are the things that we have asked leaders around the world, what are you looking for? These are the skills. They are going to increasingly drive process automation. We know if we're on the front line of doing a role that can be automated, that means us. If as we talk more about using AI to uncover hidden patterns and reporting and figuring out what we can do to add more value from a predictive analytic perspective and anticipating the types of data and reports that our leaders might want, they're actively seeking that. And for the most part, many of them do not believe they have those skills on deck right now. And so, if we're going to reinvent ourselves, reimagine our own capabilities, I would go out on YouTube, look at the AICPA.org, CGMA.org websites for these new skill sets. And also, those things would help me with my soft skills, success skills of being personable and charismatic to make recommendations that are then listened to because they know that I've invested a lot in my own capabilities. So, what does that mean for leaders, especially accounting leaders? We aren't necessarily known, I would say, for being the most persuasive because I think it comes across like, guys, we have a new opportunity about a project area that is going to make our lives easier. And so it's not enthusiastic. We've got to believe in the change. We've got to have people buy into the leader. You got to buy into the message. And so we've got to have champions. And maybe the champions are people who've been working for 30 years. Because if we don't get them on board from a people perspective, and I don't know if our leaders at the top line of the organizations, if they know that there's someone in the accounts receivable, accounts payable, reporting area that's been there 20 years. But if they're not on board with it, and if they say it's not going to work, then the rest of the team and that organization, they're not going to be as excited either. So we may have to have small focus group meetings with key members that we want to be champions. We also have to remember that the messaging is in context. Boomers might want their messaging a little bit different than, say, let's say millennials and Gen Zs. And I say that because maybe there are avatars and gamifications, kiosks, sending out alerts on and text or using Snapchat or Instagram that might be productive and effective for different populations. But boomers may say, okay, I want to know exactly what's going on, answer my questions, and then give it to me in writing. Now, we know a lot of that you can't give in writing, but I do know and respect that my colleagues who are boomers need a lot more detail and they need it to be a little more tangible than maybe the doing it via digital engagement techniques. So we've got to put it in context of demographics. We have to put it in context of my specific role. So we're talking a lot about, having a change leader. And it's not just something you can say, oh, I'm just going to give this to someone else who's the busiest person in the organization. We're going to give it to HR. We're going to give it to them. Not unless they're well equipped and have the resources and understanding in order to do it. We're not setting them up to succeed. We also need to collaborate. And that means different steps in the process, asking for help, asking the people who are doing the role, hey guys, let's just do a check. If you're using agile, you're going to have quick wins and you're going to figure out what's working really fast so you can stop doing it. We're going to have to coordinate and cooperate across a lot of different areas. And that also means in areas where you're not quite sure if it means success or not, but you know that if you don't over communicate, you're not persuasive, that people are going to resist the change. So that's definitely something to consider. And I can tell you from my journey and the lessons learned and what I've heard is that we've got to walk through the employee experience, understand what it means for their role so that we can determine what the full impact might be. And I was so excited when I learned how to do journey maps because it really does follow a what's on deck behind the scenes, what systems, what people, what processes do your employees interface with so that they can feel a part of the process. It has to be a horizontal initiative. I know that sometimes we set it up in a sandbox so we can get it off the ground and get it moving faster. I know that sometimes we bring in outside consultants to help provide us guidance. But a lot of this has to be driven by the people who are most impacted so that they can feel that there's something in it for them. We also have to profile the success, get some quotes, get people who are excited to be ambassadors and do those webcasts also, not just the CEO, the CFO. Get some people in the various areas so that when people are looking at their colleagues, they buy into it. We also have to have various communication channels, every channel you can imagine. So, this is the third question. And so, I don't know if you want to launch the question, Tom.
Yep, I'm launching it right now. So just 1 second. Alrighty. Changes in my industry will primarily require changes to our business model, technologies, or processes. All right, so we'll just wait for everybody to answer that poll question. While everyone's answering it real quick, Melanie asked about your material, just wondering how this impacts small companies. You give a couple sentences on that, Kimberly?
Sure. So, from a small company perspective, Melanie, I think if you have people in your environment, it impacts you even faster because you don't have any fluff in your environment. You need all the team members that have been working with you over time. And I think because they're stakeholders, they're working in a small environment, the grapevine doesn't have to go really far. It's at the coffee machine. You have to tell people right up front what the impact is. And so I think that's beneficial. I would also say for everyone who's here, I am able to stay on for a little while after this to keep answering questions, but I will be finishing my presentation in the next 2 minutes so that we can see if anyone does have questions.
Alrighty. Let's close the poll question up. We have everybody who voted here. So we're going to close and share those results. So changes in my industry will primarily require changes to our 44% said processes, 40% said technology, and 17% said business model. Is that in line with what you're thinking there, Kimberly?
Yes, because its processes are first, which would have a huge people impact. Because when we start talking about eliminating processes, really simplifying them, streamlining them, centralizing them, and automating them, that would have a huge people impact. And then, of course, the technology is the easiest part on the slide, but it's the business model change. We've operated in, let's say, if we're on site, we go to the client's office, the client comes to our office. There are so many virtual organizations now, virtual CFO, virtual client advisory services set it up that small businesses can be big businesses and businesses can operate in multiple places. So I think that's really exciting. Now I'm going to move through the next few slides so we can see if there are any questions because I think that is the best part. And so this slide really just aligns with we can really have a winning combination with humans and machines. We should take the fear factor out of it by being transparent, being specific, over communicating what the impact will be, and taking people along with us on the journey. I think at the same time, we know that we have to invest in new skills. And so whether you're going to YouTube, you're going to Coursera, you're going to AICPA.org, you have a lot of different avenues to come up to speed on what the technology is. And also at the same time, those soft critical skills that we need. And that will help us embrace the change. It'll take the fear out of the change. There's something the organizations can do, but there's absolutely something we can do as well. And then, of course, back to AICPA, we really are working actively across all segments of the profession, across all sizes of the organization to bring everyone along. And I would encourage everyone to see if they have resistance areas to change and which one of these areas would help them feel more comfortable. If there's anything I can do to help, please do link in. Please tell me how I can help. I'm happy to share more insights from my travels, but I'm absolutely looking forward to talking with you more about people. And so, with that, Tom, that concludes my presentation.
All right. Thank you so much, Kimberly. We're just going to leave it open just maybe for another minute here to see if we have any questions on here. Armando said earlier in the webinar that you're spot on in just about everything that you had mentioned thus far. So that's terrific. Thank you so much for everything, Kimberly. If there are any other questions, I'll be sure to send them out to all of the attendees afterwards. I'm going to take back presentation controls here. All right, and just share my screen. So folks, we wanted to thank you very much for joining us today. Kimberly's presentation was fantastic. Our next expert webinar presentation will be taking place on November 6th at 2 p.m. It's my boss, Div Bonsali. He's the vice president here at Accountants World, and he is going to be speaking on a modern approach to marketing your firm. I have heard Div speak both in person and in webinars, and he gives a really interesting presentation about how you can market your firm using maybe even some of the techniques that Kimberly talked about today. So if you are interested in signing up for that, sign up for all these years expert webinars as well. You can do so at 2019webinars.com. I want to thank everybody for coming today. And Kimberly, thank you very much once again. It was a terrific presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.